Hello and most welcome to 1719 of the Heidegger series. We are presently with Rethinking the Inner by Paul Johnston. We are discussing the picture of the inner. What is the reason for this prevailing and captivating picture? Johnston, Wittgenstein are carefully sketching out and indicating the properties of this picture. Without using too much force, being careful not to establishing something new. One could say he wants to awaken something in us. And once it comes awake by a gradual development, almost like slowly developing a photograph from a negative. Without using too much force, and while at the same time not making the contrasts too great, too stark, too clear. It needs to be in the beginning very diffuse. That's the captivating picture slowly coming to the fore. It does need its time though, that's of great importance. It is like a bread. It will not yield from force. It needs its time. Yeasting period for its full shape to come alive. Also reminds me a bit by something called loose sketching. It's a very slow way of sketching. While you build up the figure with thin, undecisive lines. Not using too much force. Carefully, little by little, defining something. Here, definition or contrast comes very, very late in the process. And that is the most important trait in this development. The slowness of the development is in itself the most important property, and you also learn this slowness of method. That is in itself very important. Coming in too quickly and the contrasts are too stark. The picture will be overexposed and it won't be true. It will just put too much force on your vision or your perception. It's most definitely the same with the picture of Wittgenstein's, slowly developing through the books as it did in his very own life. It took decades within one of maybe the smartest men ever to be alive. Then comes the process of realization. That this picture has been guiding. And I think that would happen in combination with a sort of shock that there even was a picture. think our regular belief is that we let our rationality, or we'll say rather the force of the words, our intentions, our knowledge, beliefs, wants, hopes, desires and inner drives. I think the general conception is, of course, a lot of exceptions. I would think that the general conception is that this guides us. But we discover and maybe get mesmerized and possibly shocked to find out that there is a picture guiding us. I think that is the most, that's the decisive difference. And once, through exposure, this picture becomes clearer. It comes also in, I think that's an important part, it comes in healthy doses. Doesn't go from, in too high doses it will go from pharmacon to be pharmacy, from medicine to poison. And that is, of course, not a desired result. But in these, as I try to depict these smaller doses, little by little, letting the image come to the fore without forcing it on you. That will have a most wholesome effect. First, a sort of amazing discovery. That in itself, just to see that this picture was there, is in itself a boon. of great value. But then it starts to do its tricks, or do its having its pharmacon effects, and a sort of understanding that this very picture had been guiding me. That will make it possible to, in your choice, to continue to be sort of absorbed by the picture, but you can also choose to stir into the direction of your, what Wittgenstein amongst other categories use, dispositions, emotions, intentions, knowledge. That would be a greater range of movement. Words as participating in the language game, constantly in there. Being effective. Developed by the years to have what you become skillful using them. These concepts, words of the language game are much more helpful and stronger. You will command more of the tools in the toolbox, or you will command more of the possibilities of the tools when the, so to speak, unconscious guidance of the picture is slowly coming to the side or become optional. I think that's the correct word. Well, you get more of yourself. All of a sudden, you choose which words on a much freer basis to use. There is a limiting effect that slowly goes to the side, slowly subside. And many of the side effects that's been popping up all during these last 1700 episodes, like existence and subject, will become freer, and what they been hiding will come up and be available to understanding. No longer shut off, becomes accessible. One could say that the sharp delineation of inner-outer is also the very effect of hiding a greater abundance underneath. And also the third aspect is this obsession with the idea of the hidden inner. When that subsides, it will open up for a greater range of possibilities. More possibilities will open up. A treasure chest. new aspects, properties, differences, peculiarities, all those interesting things that's been hidden will now be able to come to the fore. This is an opening up of all those interesting properties that are indicated by Wittgenstein in his many books. So, what is usually hidden for us is the differences in emotion and how they are not the same and reducible to all the experience of sorts. That is something that covers up all the interesting aspects, the multifarious, incredible range of possibilities that sort of lies underneath. And once it come up, you get amazed by, wow, that inside, that was just purely insideness of unknown psychological reaction or amazing complexity of a variety of things, almost unending and it's very similar. It's, I would say, finishing off the want that is being characterized in Fire Abend's last posthumous book, The Conquest of Abundance. Where it becomes, well, he sort of shows what his mission would be, and he doesn't really have the means for doing it, because he usually in that very book looks at the disappearance of the multifarious aspects in the outer mostly. For instance, in art, music, science. But the inner is in I'm saying connection, close connection to the outer. There are two sides of the very same coin. Once more, I can directly say it's the DCCT that is acting up. On one side, as we mentioned, we have Caesar Flavius, a deceased child of Emperor Domitian, made into a divus, a godlike figure. On the other side, on the rectus side of the coin, the head side, we have the emperor himself, Domitian. And he is not only emperor, supreme judge, and God on earth. Inner and the outer are like this. They come to existence when they can be opposites to each other. This is their way of being entangled. And my guess here is that the picture says the opposite. Them being opposite is the problem. They need sameness. And that is the mistaken belief. Or the mistake is having a picture ruling one's thinking. Having an unknown, unmeasurable effect on one's life. the abundance can only be let free if the innerness is being opened up. This forceful picture, the captivating picture, goes to the side and or lets itself be seen. I think that's the most important step. There are many steps here, but that could be one of the most important ones. Also, I started getting a feeling that in the olden days, the picture wasn't that strong in all regions. That there wasn't this confusion between attitude towards of attitude towards or attitude that, and on the opinion that. And I think that is escalation in the development, if you like. I call that technological thinking. I would say that has become especially strong after the post-Renaissance, and it's so, if you want, overexposedly clear in the age of enlightenment, no doubt. And all changes like this happens with benefits, no exceptions, otherwise they will not happen. But with the benefits, also a change, I would say, to more alliance or obedience to that picture came about. Technological thinking is trying to make for instance, attitude towards into an opinion that. And with that, of course, the problem starts. We make all these differences, this 50, 60 things, which is just a small piece of all what's inner and outer, and depicted by Wittgenstein in Remarks on the Philosophy of Psychology, Zettel, the Brown Book, Philosophical Investigations, and so forth. It's just some of it, it's so much more. This richness is then being covered up even more, and this is referred by Feyerabend as universalism or generalization. Thomas Nagel, I mentioned many times, there the same or similar tendency becomes the view from nowhere. And it's also oddly depicted in Tolkien's books, the trilogy of the Ring, as Sauron, an eye that sees everything, a sort of omnipoticon, that see all-seer, constantly present in all situations, being able to observe, experience everything. I think that is also what enlightenment had is in its bosom. This panopticon being the enlightenment, the light coming from everywhere at the same time. And at that time added promises of justice, fraternity, liberty, justice. By justice I just means equality. Panopticon's light, or the Eye of Sauron. I think he was the master of Saruman in Lord of the Rings. Especially fascinating at the very end of the French Revolution, when I think it was 16 nuns or 12 nuns that were to go to the Chavot to be guillotinized because they were under the spell of fantasies, and they were not, which is in itself ridiculous, they could not dispel of the fantasies like the panopticon truth. It just show itself for them. and it was so absolutely obvious. By just ignoring it, they were evildoers. I think that was that beheading of those nuns that led to the demise of that part of the French Revolution, the revolutionary years. It's more interesting to see the underlying tendencies, but there is odd things here. The nuns were not asked to change direction. It should for them be obvious. That was the very offense. Could even be that if they admitted that they were wrong, that wouldn't be enough. Rather, they have to see it, experience. See the light, or see the truth. Going to the light, I think that's from the movie Poltergeist. Heaven as some shining, clarifying light that you can swim in. I think that's also inspired, at least, of Panopticon. The promise that's given there is some sort of absolute clarity. A friend of mine noted that in this Latter-day Saints, or the Witness of Jehovah, that's the name. Have you seen the truth is one of the most convincing words that are used by the proselytes of Jehovah's Witnesses. Can you see the truth, or have you experienced the truth? I say in this, in parenthesis, have you seen the light? The truth light that overexpose everything. Yeah, that's also that tendency. In the shining light of the enlightenment, all differences gets burned out by overexposure. It's like having an ISO 1200 on the camera. Nothing will be left. It burns out the features of both innerness and outerness at the same time. I put a little pause here before we continue. Thank you very much. Let's see here. So I was well into the picture theory. In my view, the picture is something that is slowly developing through the writings of the later Wittgenstein. And the surprise is that we were captivated by a picture. And I said it comes in 3 stages. First, to discover that there even is something vaguely looking like a picture. And then further down, letting it become stronger, clearer, more defined, but not overexposed, not ISO 1200 or a shutter that's way too open. By so doing, the 3rd phase starts, and that's seeing that we've been governed, or we've been taken, captured, captivated by the picture. And that very picture decides everything. There's no exception. Effect is tremendous. It's infusing all aspects of life, outer, inner, and it's in some way inside of language, but it is not a necessary, or how it's not a necessary part of language. But it still has the possibility of enforcing its power on us. Maybe because it is as itself not clear what it is, it's from there it gets its power. That's its source, power source. Its deep hiddenness is its power source. from there stems all its strength, its abilities. Its possibility of deciding everything with no exception whatsoever of what is happening or what sort of measures we take in life, and leaving in reality no freedom, no choice, but endless repetition rather. So the picture theory, one could call that, not to be confused with the idea of language depicting the world as the picture theory. This is mere in the region of that the picture is what actually in the at bottom demands everything else. It's the ring to command all other rings and all happenings in the world, above as well as beneath. And as such, especially I think, as I mentioned, because it is strictly unknown, it is not in our consciousness or awareness, in our knowledge, I think that's a more correct term. It is not in reach of knowledge. It's similar to, in some aspects, it is similar to the black box of the hiddenness in the private language, or the opacity of the outside world that it cannot enter other than incredibly indirectly with the means of epistemology or empiricism and such things, or some sort of advanced introspection that can open up our information about what we earlier noticed. And of course, it is the picture also that is part and parcel of the idea of hiddenness in some odd way. It's what makes the hiddenness possible. So one could say there is, and I'm going to use a maybe not the best metaphor here, but think of this metaphor of an elephant in a room, and somebody is holding its trunk, someone else its tail, someone is holding its horns, and so on. And this is, the horn could be whatever, the teeth, could be actually the hiddenness, and the tail could be the inner outer sharp difference. So they're giving hints to something that is slowly developing into an understanding of the picture. So during the read of the book you will go into these details, maybe the two persons making a wall using cement and passing over the slate. That is a part of the help to get to the picture slowly. Another help for me has been to look also at the earlier Wittgenstein. I gained access to him through Edmund Dane, and I can see hints, maybe the tusks of the elephant in also the early Wittgenstein. It is developing already there. And this very, what you can't talk about is the most important. I think that in itself is a clear hint towards the ineffability of morality. There are no such things as moral propositions. it is not diminish. That is not diminishing morality. That is most certainly strengthening it. Morality as a sort of attitude, that or an attitude towards. This is how you direct yourself out into the world. This is you. This is you being proud of yourself for your morality. Not a contingent proposition that could be right or wrong. That doesn't even make any sense in that language game. You can put your foot down and be true to yourself. Have that attitude towards others and the world, and that will change you. Otherwise you'll be swept in by doubts, and your attitude towards others will be one of fear, indecisiveness, uncertainty. So in reality, it's not that hard to see how problematic it is once there become a confusion between an opinion that and an attitude that. Uncertainty and is discouraging for the soul, I would say, to have this contingency of attitude towards others as they could have souls and they could not. This is a terrible fate of living like Daniel Dennett or Richard Dawkins in that aspect. But they instigated that themselves. It's a moral stand. It's a bit like morality is a proposition, then you don't care about it. You don't take it utterly seriously. And of course that weakens everything in you. Or say even debilitating features of your life. Making you scared to approach others in the end. They could be soulless zombies. That is a shame. That's a waste of a lot of energy and all this that incredible richness that resides within and without, all that amazing beauty. And I think of it sometimes, for me, in a moment of stillness has been painting, going into that deeply. That opens up a lot within me. Makes it possible to for a moment see so much more, experience so much more. It's a bit like a small entrance where you can go to have a greater liberty that is just not possible in the ordinary, limited life of contingent moral propositions. And some other aspect, I've been thinking about this. Language must participate. It's sounding more, and it is sounding more and more meaningless, or utterances of Ferdinand Saussure, of signed and signified, have completely stopped being meaningful to me. That makes any sense at all, to be honest. It is like he doesn't know how to use words. But that is also, with all its problems, that is also sort of pointing towards a picture, or being maybe one of the feet of the elephant. Or a part of the trunk, or the massive ears. So it's not so much, well, there's nothing of criticism in Wittgenstein. as we most usually see philosophical statements or ideologies. Rather is this softness almost artistic. Slowly, with the thinnest possible watercolors, something is being hinted at carefully with the most extensive, delicate brush strokes that in the beginning do not depict anything at all except for what themselves, what they are doing. And then slowly become more and more developed, a bit more going into the region of sharpness, decidedness, and little by little the picture comes to the fore. That is also something I've been thinking about when it comes to painting. When you put an exquisite brushstroke you really like, it is free and voluntary. It's not contingent on some other thinking that went on before, or an investigation into an innerness, an epistemological evaluation where the next brushstroke should be. No, it's more of an attitude. You put it down there because that's where it goes. Those brushstrokes are always the best. Without exception, they beat everything that's possible. And it's the same when the picture goes away, or when it doesn't go away. I think that I really put that wrongly. When you can see it, you can also start choosing not to be governed by it. Little by little, you gain your liberty of doing things without making these empirical epistemological evaluations. You just do it, and then I'm pretty sure also the things that are contingent, like opinions, will work much better. There is a connection there. We will not give up opinion as a thing. No feature of the language game will be hurt. just the opposite. All will be strengthened, no exception whatsoever. I think also it's a general strengthening of the organism as such. It will go to every vein, and I have another metaphor here for it, or a hint. As late as I think it was only a couple of years ago, I'm not sure, could have been 2017, there was a discovery of a new organ in the body. And it covered the whole of the body. Called fascia or fascia. This fascia is one singular organ and brings all of the body into one directionality. And it has this incredible feature of being chiral. And I would say, I think all these things are unknown to most GPs, and even biologists are unaware of this. This is something that's been hidden in plain sight. And without being too mysterious, I would say this holds true for the picture. It is out there in a way, and it's in there. And in a way, it's never been hidden. But it needs to be discovered, or it could be discovered. And I think this is also what Jacques Derrida and Martin Heidegger, in their own ways, are pointing towards. Jacques Derrida finds or discovers tendencies in texts that are unknown to both reader and author. For example, in the case of Cangelham, Bernard and Francois Jacob, they clearly write things that are metaphysical, transcendental. They use the idea of a goal in reality, in biology, to prove that there is no goal. So all this is going on in plain sight. Something that sometimes is referred to as marginalization, but it's not a very apt word, because it is sometimes, very often actually, in the main arguments. It doesn't have any trace of hiddenness to it, but it's still hidden in this Wittgensteinian way of having it. And this is what Derrida calls close and careful reading, distinct. Going into the details and there finding it and uncover it. Let's say Martin Heidegger goes back in history rather with his etymology and seeing being as that wholeness could be aching to when inner and outer is more understood and we are able to go inside ourselves as well as the very same time go more outside ourselves. And seeing those two things are being of the very same thing. Not massively different. And to be inner, there must also be a possibility to be outer. That's the corollary. Without the corollary, the inside would sort of slide away. The elephant will not show its feature to the same degree anymore. In the Heideggerian being, the why question is there, and I'd say you can compare the why question with an attitude towards why is speaking about a directionality. Dasein, so to speak, decides, a bit exaggerated now, excuse me for that. And it has an attitude, and thereby it can be. Otherwise, it would be contingent. It gets its strength, its wholeness, it is being. I can't imagine being if the attitude towards is contingent. It makes being unthinkable. It will be beings. It will be this perpetual sort of frictionful uncertainty. Are people with souls or not, and many other things as well. It's can be compared to one thing, speaking about morality, and that's the unconditional love, often depicted in connection with the Virgin Mary. It wouldn't be Virgin Mary if the love was conditional, contingent, or propositional. It wouldn't make any sense anymore. And that's an interesting feature I haven't mentioned yet, but when captivated by the picture, it is not only hard to get understood by others, you will in the same level not be understood by yourself, or you cannot use those parts of the language game to your advantage anymore. This is how the misunderstanding works. It's as in the example from the military exercise. When somebody goes the wrong way, he turns right instead of the commanded left. The action shows that he has not understood. Nothing more, nothing less. There's no use of saying my insideness got it wrong. It wouldn't make any sense whatsoever. This is so close to the picture. Not understanding or having knowledge is not an inner state per se. It's doing to a certain degree less, medium, or more mistakes, so to speak. It doesn't work. It's not workable. That's the friction in the everyday life. It's exactly that. Going right when it was supposed to be left, and all the others in the platoon is turned in the other way, and you in quite the opposite. So it's the habitual, everyday, every movement doing That is the captivation by the picture. Most informative about that is, I would say, James Gibson, and one of his successor I can recommend, Anthony Chimero. Affordances are, well, very simply a mix of act and theme, or what is more important than the division act or theme. And I would say that is not something before an a priori of things and acts. No. Affordances is what it is really about. That is what matters. Very similar to how in quantum mechanics, it's not that the atom or the arcane of the classical physics is wrong, but it simply does not work in the doings, not to that extent as quantum mechanics. And quantum mechanics doesn't take the inside-outsideness of the picture for granted. Another pointer in that direction, very important for me, is writer Benjamin K. Bergen, B-E-R-G-E-N. Louder Than Words is one of his books. For me, it was an important helper into the direction of Wittgenstein, was Heidegger and Derrida. All words have some sort of scribble, if you like, in the motoric part of the brain. So they are, well, that's a killer off of the representational idea completely. They are actions, or action/things. They are affordances. So there are no representations, but there is a movement/thing. It accompanies everything. It's necessary, but it's not a germ. It's not the seed of the thing. It's of great importance, needs to be there, and of course, as I mentioned before, Bernstein Bernstein's repetition of one of Elgar's works. Now I forgot the name, was it Nimbus? But his gestures obviously do not contain the work. They cannot be read off as a computer memory, and like hieroglyphs said to be containing the concert in some way. But they are a necessary accompaniment of understanding how to play better, to polish the writing. That aspect is enormously important, enormous. That's great difference. The germ that will become something, and the germ contains everything, all the potentialities. That's a locking of the possibility. That's the captivation of the picture. But instead coming at the same time, accompanying. This is more what Wittgenstein, Derrida, Heidegger are pointing to. A sort of openness, and not chain-like causality that binds everything, makes movement hard. Chain your hands, handcuff them, handcuff the thinking. That's cause and effect. Very well. Say thank you very much for your patience. Have a very pleasant day, afternoon, evening, night, wherever you are. Bye bye for now.